everyone, and welcome to this series dedicated to exploring the intersection of artificial intelligence and user experience research. I'm Andrea, your host, and we're here to deep dive into the latest AI-enabled research tools. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's turn the spotlight on today's presenter. Jack is the co-founder of CoLoop, the AI copilot for insights and strategy professionals. Jack and his co-founder, Adrian, are Y Combinator alumni and second-time founders. CoLoop is a qualitative analysis tool that works collaboratively with researchers to reduce content analysis cost and time by 10x without outsourcing. And with that, Jack, thank you so much for joining me this morning or evening.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, excited to be here.
What is CoLoop and what can it do for UX researchers?
Yeah, so essentially CoLoop's a AI analysis platform for qualitative research, and we wanted to provide a very simple platform that could just ingest your data from wherever it came from and enable you to start applying AI models over the top of it to improve your analysis.
How has incorporated AI into the research process?
What it basically allows you to do is ask questions in this kind of very natural way. It will suggest them for you, and you can effectively produce customized summaries around particular segments, concepts, or groups, or across your entire data set, and effectively link all of those directly back to the supporting evidence.
What would you consider CoLoop's superpower to be?
The accuracy is really good, and it's very, very compatible with almost any type of quant project that you'd want to run. At present, based on internal benchmarks, we're able to produce analyses that are 92% plus accurate. So what that means is when you given a set of interviews, if you ask a question, it's able to, with that level of accuracy, identify the correct sections of documents to refer to and bring those together into an organized set of results. And then the second thing I would say we've also worked quite hard on is integrations. The tool space for Qual is vast. Make it very simple for researchers to just bring all of that data in, regardless of where it comes from.
So you can import lots of different types of file formats and data from different platforms where you've collected the data.
Absolutely. So interviews from Zoom, bulletin boards from platforms like Qualzy, Inkling, or chatbots from products like Yazzie as well.
And with that, why don't we jump in and you can show us what it's like for a UX researcher or someone like me to start using CoLoop.
Absolutely. So when you get into CoLoop for the first time, you end up on this page here. It's the dashboard where you store all of your research projects. And in order to set one up, you click this button and you give it a name. And you call this one First Time Voters in the US. You can choose a region to store your primary research material in to minimize egress of any PII. It's fully collaborative, so you can set a scope if you want to keep that private or share it with the rest of your team. The next thing you do is then bring in some background information to effectively brief the AI on what it is that you're trying to do with this research project. This step's really important, and the way it works is you bring in either a discussion guide or briefing document, and from that we will derive a set of objectives and a description of the project.
So just in case folks missed it, Jack just uploaded the document, which is like the description of the project. The system intuited what the objectives were from that description and then summarized or synthesized a description from that content.
The reason this step's really important is because we actually use these details to personalize a range of different steps downstream.
So as I understand it, this is giving the AI the context it needs about what your study goals were, data you collected, what is important and of interest to you and your stakeholders, and lets the AI then keep that in mind as it's doing the analysis and as it's answering your questions, so that it's giving you results that are more tailored to what you are interested in and what you are looking for in the data set.
Yeah, so exactly that. And once you've done that, you just hit complete. And then the next thing you do is go ahead and bring in some research material. So these are the formats and providers that we support right now. We can do raw video and audio, transcript formats, and then the increasing range of third-party providers I alluded to earlier as well. The other nice thing about this is that you can also blend together those different sources of data. So if you have imported, say, a set of segments which were gathered as part of a pre-study you did in field notes, those can actually be joined up with interviews as well that were done in perhaps Zoom or Teams, which we also integrate with, and enable you to effectively analyze the holistic set of responses rather than the traditional approach, which would have been to perhaps look at those in individual silos.
If you were importing something that had visual stimulus, say something from user testing, how does CoLoop handle that?
One of the things to bear in mind is that the AI will operate on the level of the transcript. So you have to be at some point reference the stem that you're referring to. A few of you guys may have noticed there was another feature there in the setup I didn't allude to there, which is it's called concept testing. The idea with that is that you can basically provide CoLoop with keywords, and it will actually go through and tag and chapter your conversations around those keywords. The big use case that we have for this with our kind of core customers is usually around stimulus or concept. So if they're showing people different territories or pieces of copy, they can refer to them, and then the system will tag those and effectively sort them in a similar way to the way that we filter and sort speakers to give you good accuracy over being able to refer to them. The next step we're then going to go through is essentially talk about how you process that. So the first thing it will get you to do is then to assign names to those speakers. You can do that by typing them in manually based on where they've been introduced. Or if you want to, you can also just auto-label your entire transcript, and it will go ahead and apply all of the speaker names for you automatically. We'll also imply a role for every participant too. So we will effectively say whether they are a participant or a researcher within the context of this interview.
And you can handle multiple speakers and multiple interviewers, is that right?
Exactly, multiple speakers, multiple moderators. Other tools out there that are for more general use cases like Copilot or ChatGPT, for instance, are not set up for specific qual analysis. And so they will tend to confuse text segments that were provided by different participants.
I just saw the summary populate.
It's kind of funny. I remember, a year or two ago, this would have been a key feature. This would have been really interesting to people, and I think at this point they're almost expected. But we do provide you with summaries of all of your interviews. These are steered by the background objectives, so they will be specific towards the points that you want to know about. They're very good, and at this point, honestly, you could pretty much export that and with a bit of editing, use that straight out the gate as a top line for a client if they want a quick update. We've also got translation support, so we can transcribe in 16 different languages, and we can also translate them for you as well. The next thing you want to do is go ahead and apply some segments. Segments are essentially where you bring in things like age, gender, customer demographic, that kind of thing. You can do it manually by clicking here and typing in names for them, or applying ones that you loaded in. Or what you can do is bring in a recruitment grid, hit process, and import that directly from your Excel.
So that Excel file has everyone's name and all of their details, and it will just cross-reference that. And so it automatically knew that Amelia voted by mail and was female, and that Dylan voted in person and was male.
Correct, yeah. As you guys will see in a sec, it basically allows you to kind of filter and compare across between or within those different segments and look at different cuts of your participant data really, really easily. In terms of the analysis, so there are qualitative analysis grids. These are very useful for the sort of 10,000-foot view. So what they do is they list all of your participants down the left, and they will enable you to either type in or choose suggested questions from this list up at the top. These suggested questions are based on your discussion guide, so they'll essentially provide a bit of a framework for how to interrogate that material, and it will go through and generate summary responses for each individual participant. And then up at the top, it will summarize those together into a thematic overview. All of these points are hyperlinked, so you can click on any one of these outputs, and it will take you right back to the supporting evidence and quotes on the right-hand side here. So you can always see exactly where that piece of information came from.
So let's just do that, what you had shown us once more. Let's just do it one more time. So let's see, we are looking at trust and security. And let's say we wanted to drill in on some participants chose in-person voting due to a lack of trust in the mail-in system. And then what it's done in the third panel is pulled quotes from Dylan and Amelia and others that were relevant to the idea of trust in the mail-in system or concerns about their ballot being lost.
Exactly.
And the colored purple
The highlights on there essentially will tell you how relevant that particular piece of the transcript was to the point being made.
It also, I think, gives you some insight into what the AI is thinking, or like how it's interpreting the signals.
Exactly, yeah. Particularly in this example, the segment feature as well is something that has landed very well with customers. Previously, this type of comparison or analysis would not have been possible within the constraints of time and cost. And by kind of giving you that granular access and that ability to compare, I could actually look at specific individuals within a particular group or within subsets of my groups and get very, very customized summaries and primary analysis. If you do want to do comparisons across them, we also have custom grids, which will allow you to look at different cross sections of your research participants. So with these, they work the same way, except you're able to set up rows that correspond to those segments. You can then ask questions like that. And this time around, it's going to look at the consensus of all the participants that fell within that particular segment. So you can get a cross section of all of your research participants. These can be chained together as well, so you can get ands, ors, different cuts, unions, intersections of your research participants, and really create whatever sort of analysis report you want to.
Great. I found this was very helpful when I was comparing the large scale study that I had run between participants in different countries. And so I was able to say, like, just tell me about the respondents from Mexico, just tell me about the respondents from the US, and then get, the answers to the questions, but summarized at that level.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a core use case. Other things as well, we've seen a win-loss analysis if you want to see comparisons of people that left a service versus ones that are still using it. In terms of the other analysis feature we also have an AI chat. The general workflow that people go through when they're using CoLoop is they tend to start in the analysis grid and they use it for that kind of 10,000 foot view. What it allows you to do is just to operate in a very hypothesis-led manner, generate proposed themes and buckets to organize your research material by, and then lift those out to create an outline or a structure of a report. Once you have that, the AI chat is then very useful in a confirmatory way to start to dig into individual sections or points and get additional detail, content, quotes, and information to build out individual slides or sections of a final report. So the way that works is you create a chat, you can scope it to everything, specific files or other subsets of your data. You can create those and then ask it questions in natural language. It functions like ChatGPT or Bard, except it's private, secure, specialized for qual, can understand things like segments and concepts. It's much more accurate and it will show all of its working and cite any of its sources too. So we can ask it questions like compare the voting experience by mail and in-person voters. And it understands exactly what that means in the context of my project. I can ask that question, and then what it will do is go through, show you what terms it's scanning for, give you a sense of how much evidence and how many participants it's dependent on, and then it will outline an answer for you with supporting evidence that you can click through on and see the sources and citations for as well.
My impression has been that it's really geared towards qualitative data, so interview and transcripts and things like that.
Yeah, that's accurate. Although I think it's quite interesting what we've seen in the last few months is a increasing blur of the boundary between qualitative and quant scale data. I think one of the really interesting trends at the moment is definitely the kind of rise of more sort of multimedia surveys and chatbot tools that are actually breaking the traditional paradigm. What we're actually starting to see is more and more folks using our services for what we're starting to refer to as middle data. So sets of responses from chatbots, which effectively amount to potentially hundreds of kind of 5-10 minute conversations with users that have approaching quant scale, but a lot of qualitative value that can be derived from them as well.
Yeah, that's definitely been one of my approaches with CoLoop, was as I did larger scale qualitative studies, I was like, I've gotten myself into a pickle.
Yep.
With the on the analysis side. And so using AI got me into this. Can AI get me out of this?
The tools out there, tools like Video Ask and Yazzie and Inca, I think are really excellent in terms of the levels of engagement, the detail, the response rates they can get. And I think people are understandably eager to use them. And as you say, this then creates a sort of burden on the analysis side, because it's, it's a form of data that, hasn't really been possible to collect at that scale or in that depth before. What you end up with is effectively a very organized, structured outline of all of your research material that you can really kind of pick through and think about without getting overwhelmed by the sheer amount of data that you have.
Can I do this in collaboration with others?
Yep. So it's fully collaborative. You can build teams, you can access manage. We work with a number of large agencies, the largest of which are around sort of 700 researchers. So it's very much set up for large scale and full collaboration across projects. So you can share all of those grids, AI chats, and really work together on projects.
Let's talk a little bit about the ways that you're keeping user data safe and secure.
Yeah, definitely. So our core ICP that we built from day one was folks working at research agencies and consultancies. Maintaining privacy of data is incredibly important. The way that we approach that is that we are very, very clear that we do not train or retain any kind of data that you upload to CoLoop. We built all of our systems securely in line with all of the industry standards. And fundamentally, once you have uploaded something to CoLoop, it will function like a walled garden. It's not available to other folks who are not within that project or organization. And when you delete things, they are actually wiped from the system. The high classification of PII tends to be the video and audio. So that would count as biometric data. The transcripts which you process from those are effectively moved down in terms of classification. And so those files will still reside on servers in the US for access to the sub-processors we rely on, like OpenAI and Cohere, etc. But those raw files that are of high classification will stay in that particular region.
This tool allows for a lot of analysis very quickly and a lot of sort of aggregate analysis, especially if you're just using the segmentation tools. When performing old school manual analysis, where you're reading the transcripts and you're putting notes in tagging and taking your own notes and things like that, the internalizing of the findings and the sense making is happening within the researcher's mind or the collective minds of the team who's doing the analysis, and that shapes a mental model that emerges. How can the researcher still get that experience? Or what are there techniques or approaches to using something like CoLoop that can still allow for that feeling or that experience of sort of wrapping your head around the data and sense making?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things I probably skated over a bit earlier was in addition to these summaries, we also generate a QA tab as well. This is essentially a synthesized version of the interview. So it's less redactive than a summary, but it's much easier to read than the full interview with all of the ums and ahs, etc. So it's effectively a summary of all the responses, in this case, for the respondents in the focus group per question. What that allows you to do is get coverage of the research material if you didn't particularly conduct this interview.
If you're conducting the interviews live or yourself, it's still sort of a best ethnography practice to take that 10 to 20 minutes to debrief after each participant and capture the salient facts and what your impressions were, and that distillation of what you just heard while it's super fresh in your mind and before you've heard the next participant is still, I'd say, a best practice that I would still do, even if I'm then going to do my analysis in something like this. Initial impressions can come from either the grid or explorations that are AI assisted, or from your own experiences, your own notes and recollections. So you can sort of hybridize your practice.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things we saw, particularly when we were doing the initial discovery work as well, was when you have a multi-phase research project where you've got multiple moderators, they might be in different languages, different regions. Oftentimes, from what we saw, they were relying on debriefs to assimilate the experiences of the other people working on the research project. Without effective tools to recall, validate, or fact check anything that was being said, what would happen every so often is one researcher would say, I think I had this experience, and other individuals present in that debrief wouldn't challenge that particular point or assumption because they weren't present in the interview, and it would effectively become an assumed fact of that research project, and may go on to influence their interviews that they later conducted. So what we're doing with CoLoop is certainly not trying to replace researchers. It's much more about augmenting and giving you that extension, that ability to just very rapidly check any intuition or point and kind of get to that primary set of organized notes really quickly, so you can start to think about what it all means.
There's definitely the sense when you're using CoLoop that this is built for researchers.
A lot of the value in being able to do this as well is the fact that you as the individual writing that report are also getting far more exposure to this data than you perhaps would have done otherwise.
To hear more about how you're measuring accuracy.
Yeah, so the way that we approach that, what we effectively do is take a set of interviews with the corresponding guide. We tend to pick ones that are very difficult in technical domains, where guides were switched around, people ask questions in different orders. And what we test is the ability of the system, given a verbatim question from the guide, to extract the correct sections of those corresponding transcripts where that particular point was asked. And we use that as a proxy for our accuracy. The other thing we do as well is model-based evaluations. So when people open evidence panels, we will also run an additional step over the evidence panel and basically get another model to kind of mark its own homework and evaluate the fitness of the provided evidence to the point being supported.
And the evidence panel is that third panel on the side, like if you clicked into one of the links, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you were to open up one of the points and look for that key supporting evidence, that would be the information that's brought up here to support the point being made.
So you're doing some quality checks at this level as well. Okay. What are the ways that I can export the results or the analysis?
And so what you should really be doing is keeping a working document open on the side and making sure that you're exploring the output and the evidence, and then kind of selectively lifting things out, rather than looking to kind of wholesale extract or download things. The grids that we produce can be downloaded. You can export these and copy them out into Excel tables if you want to. Our kind of thesis around the product of putting the research in the center of this and working collaboratively with you in that process very much does encourage exploration of the results, and therefore some sort of QA and read through of what it's producing, and a decision to lift it out or to explore further or negate a particular point.
I love the idea of exporting these and almost like printing them out and doing a workshop if I'm doing something live or like in person, where you can use the analysis grid as like an input to the workshop or input to the analysis, the group analysis.
Another sort of use case around that too that we've seen is folks using tools like the chat to support a workshop or a debrief by effectively allowing them to check a particular point or hypothesis test something, or if they're debriefing with a client and they throw them a bit of a curveball and ask if anyone mentioned a particular point, it just gives them that rapid recall to sift through everything quickly and have an answer for them.
I'm curious to understand a little bit about how the responses are analyzed by the AI.
Depending on the question that you ask or the prompt that you put in, there is a kind of cascade of different AI models which will essentially take different steps or decisions to kind of pull in, refine and package up results before presenting them back to you. The general approach that it takes is very, very similar intuitively to what would happen if you asked a junior research assistant to go and do this. It goes off, it reads things, it shortlists them, it gathers it all together, and then it uses that information, a refined set of it, to essentially produce the answer for you, and we'll put in citations to relate those back to where it came from so that you can check its work.
If folks are excited to try CoLoop, what should they do?
Yeah, so if you head on over to our website, coloop.ai, you should be able to pop in your details here and arrange a call with one of the team. And then during that call, we'll run through more details on the product specifics and explain more about trials, cost, and how you can get started.
Great.
And if anyone's interested in more demos too, we also have a community group on LinkedIn that you can go visit up here on this link. So it's full of nearly 1,000 researchers now, lots of product feedback, discussions, thought leadership, opinion pieces about AI and qual, where it's all heading, and product feedback, and an opportunity to kind of see a few more demos of CoLoop as well.
Well, thank you so very much. This was wonderful. And, thank you for building such a useful product with, as you put it, researchers at the center.